We're here in Orlando at Disney World, where the holiday shopping has been kicking into high gear. Well, maybe not quite that. Maybe not quite yet. The winter meeting's off to a slow start here as baseball comes together for a few days. Teams checking their lists, looking at them twice, and trying to figure out what they can put under the tree for fans back in Boston. It is a special Winter Meetings edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Welcome to Orlando. Tom Caron, along with Lou Merloni. Some years we come down here and it is nonstop action. Some years we come down here and come on the air and there's nothing. And that's where we stand today. But it's early.
Yeah, it is. It's day one. People kind of talk. And I think a lot of teams on day one, and you would think maybe they do this beforehand. I'm sure they have, but really kind of sit down and really think about what we're doing here. Like put together the strategy, how we want to attack this. Sometimes day two, things start getting done. But the Red Sox got a lot to do. They got a lot to do here in Orlando. You got to find some offense. They got some pitching, but we got to find some offense.
They've made a couple of moves, right? Sonny Gray, Johan Oviedo. Yeah. If you made either one of those moves today, we'd be talking about a big move. Instead, those were last week. It's old news. You move on, wait for the next thing. As you sit here, is a bat the priority now after those two moves?
Yeah, I think two bats really are a priority, and that's the reason why I think it is slow. You know, when you look at the big free agents, they're kind of in pairs, right? Schwarber and Alonso, Bregman and Bichette. You have two Japanese players in Murakami, and Okamoto, who are corner infielders. They can go all the way to January 4th. So everyone's waiting for one, and that's usually the way it goes, right? Schwarber signs, Alonso, I'm sure, will go soon. So this is the way it usually happens. The question is, will we get one of those guys, one of those pairs to sign here and see the other shoe to drop?
Seems like there's always a guy or two the Red Sox are linked to that stretches all year. Jordan Montgomery a couple years ago never happened, but it was that whole winter. Alex Bregman last year, it wasn't until February in Fort Myers when it finally got done.
Yeah, but the thing is, for me, the one thing I want here in Orlando is some clarity, right, and a path. And I think they've done that on the pitching side of it. You brought in Sonny Gray, you brought in Oviedo, who they really like. But now it's sort of like, okay, will we trade for another arm? All right, maybe they can identify a pitcher or two or three, whatever it may be. Offensively, I think it's wide open. They can go many ways. They've acquired so many arms here, TC, that they could trade for a bat. Right? You have an outfielder. You could trade an outfielder for a bat. You could just sign a free agent bat. Like, there's a lot of different ways this team can go, and it's hopefully the next day or two they start determining where to go.
Pete Alonso is one of the big names out there. Reports are he's coming to Orlando if he's not already here, meeting with teams. The belief is the Red Sox are one of those teams. We'll get to all that, but first, here's what Craig Breslow said just a little bit ago to the media when we went up into the war room and asked him about how he thinks he can help improve this team between now and the start of the season.
Sure. When there's been the opportunity to improve the team, especially a team that's been competitive and one that has hopes of competing deep into the playoffs, ownership has supported investing in it. This year is no different. So we've cast a pretty wide net with respect to how we can improve the team, and at least as we sit here today, there are a number of opportunities. And when we talk about the flexibility, I think it means that there are a bunch of different ways that we can get better because only a handful of our players are kind of anchored to a specific position.
How do you feel about the markets unfolding in regards to those bats? And do you think that once one signing will lead to potentially freeing up another signing?
I think it's hard to tell at this point because we've seen where that has been the case, and you look at a particular free agent as seemingly holding up the market, and in other years, each of those has been kind of an individual phenomenon. So there's really no way to predict that outside of identifying the targets and staying engaged with them.
And how do you see the market unfolding here? Is it what you thought it would be in terms of the speed or the interest or the prices?
I think we're still figuring that out. There are still a number of really talented players that are available in free agency, and obviously having conversations with teams about potential trade targets as well. Just think it's really hard to handicap how the market's going to play out at this point.
How different do you feel?
I guess the big question is, do you add an S to the word bat? Do you need an impact bat? or do you need impact bats? And I feel with the loss of Bregman, even if he was back, you'd be looking to add to it. So you really kind of need two, don't you?
Yeah, I think you need to. You know, when you look at the end of the year when Roman Anthony was healthy and he was leading off, Bregman was second, Duran third, Story, and then Nathaniel Lowe. Well, Lowe is gone. Bregman is gone currently. You were talking about trading Jarren Duran, and it's like, can you build a lineup with Story hitting fifth? Like, that's a lineup. Now, in order to do that, you got to fill 2, 3, 4. So you got to fill 3. But I do think about it. Last year when you had Bregman, you sat there and said, you'd like to get one more bat. Well, you don't have Bregman anymore. So if you bring back a Bregman, or if you go crazy and give 8 years out to Bo Bichette, you're still sort of short. You're where you were exactly last year. So are you adding or are you replacing? I think they need to add, but I'd like to see them add that impact bat here, just like they did with Sonny Gray, and then explore where else this can go. Is there a secondary bat in free agency? Is there a secondary bat, an impact bat you can get in a trade? Right?
The international market, Japan, like you mentioned before,
Absolutely.
There's a number of ways to get that second guy. So when you're starting with really a bat that's going to replace Rafael Devers, right? In a lot of ways, that's what you're talking about. The 40 home run guy in the middle of the lineup, the two names that jump out are Alonso and Schwarber. Alonso seems to make more sense, an easier fit. Right-handed, you'd like that. Can play first base more than Schwarber, who's a DH. You got Yoshida there. So let's start with Alonso. The reports are he's coming to Orlando, meeting with teams. Red Sox expected to be one of them. Seems like an easy fit if you can figure out the terms.
Yeah, he really kind of helps you out in so many areas, you know. I mean, but he can play first base. We know that. I mean, is he great defensively? No, but he can play first base. And I think when you add a guy that can hit 45 home runs, I think, you know, there's some things you got to give up just a little bit, right? So he just fits. You know, I like Schwarber, but I look at Pete Alonso, I say Fenway Park, you know, this guy, he played in New York, and I know Schwarber can handle the market too. We all know that. But he plays first base, the right-handed bat. The Boston Red Sox need pop from the right side. They always have. They always need it, and I think he just fits.
The other interesting story was Bo Bichette, right?
Yep.
Now, we've talked about that, but Ken Rosenthal saying that the Red Sox have expressed some interest there. A little bit of a different guy. Maybe not quite the home run power, but as a guy who can lead the league in hits. It gives you a little bit of veteran leadership, right? They're going to have to replace some of that. He can play second base where he was in the World Series because, you know, Story's going to be your shortstop. He's going to cost a lot of money, but it sounds like Bo Bichette, 4 years younger than Alex Bregman, is a guy who could really fit in well here.
Yeah, and I love Bo Bichette, but because of that youth, because of his age, that is going to be a longer-term deal. Now, what is he at? I think the biggest thing for me is that he's always defensively, he's been a struggle for him at shortstop, right? So if you take him off shortstop and you put him at second, you get average play at second, or he can play third base, you can get average play. Now you're talking about a player, right? Now you're talking about an all-around player. He is, like you said, he's a 300 hitter, basically leads the league in hits when he is healthy, and he has been. Leads the league in opposite field hits, uses the whole field, makes contact. He kind of checks a lot of boxes for you. I like Bo Bichette a lot.
Does Bo Bichette close the door on Alex Bregman? Could you bring those two guys back, or is it one or the other?
I think it's one or the other. You know, just like I think it's one or the other. You know, obviously Alonso and Schwarber. I mean, I don't know. The biggest question we have really is where's this payroll going? You know what I mean? Are you going to be able to add a Bregman or Bichette and still go after an Alonso and a Schwarber, two $30 million players? And now we're already at 285, you know, in the tax, and it's like, are they willing to go to 3? Are they willing to go over 300? I mean, to me, that is a big question. But I love both, absolutely. But I think it's like a Bichette or Bregman, and then Alonso or Schwarber.
If you get one big free agent purchase, does it make sense to try to find a bat on the trade?
Yeah.
Because you've got surplus now. You've built up the pitching depth. You've got outfield depth, major league ready outfield depth that you can move. It would seem like Ketel Marte, if we want to go, let's shoot for the moon. I know you love the idea, right? This guy, they're under control for 6 years, has averaged over 30 home runs each of the last 3 years. One of the best hitters, power, average. He could do it all. He could help this team a lot.
He's the best second baseman in the game right now. It's got, like you said, 5 years and a player option on top of that. So in order to get a guy, now you have built a guy like that, it's got to hurt, right? You built up so much depth. You can go up and down this, and everybody, Red Sox fans will sit there and say, well, I don't want to give up early. I don't want to give up totally. And the list goes on and on and on. But, you know, you can't start at that bottom of the depth and say, let's go get a guy like Marte. If you want Ketel Marte on this team and solidify second base, which hasn't been done since Dustin Pedroia, you are going to have to give up top-of-the-line arms. for that guy, right? So you're right. That's another way to kind of add to this offense.
But that 5 to 6 years of control, that's a different story, right? You can't get that. I mean, if you're going to give that on free agent, you're going to have a guy till he's 40.
Yeah.
Right? This is a guy who you're getting, 30, and you're getting him in the prime of his career.
Yeah, and it still is. It was 31 to 36. You're talking about impact bet. We went down to play Arizona, and I'm looking at Perdomo and Marte. Like, these guys are out in the Diamondbacks. Nobody even knows about them. This is the best middle infield in baseball. Both these guys. And be able to have a switch hitter. You got a lefty on the mound, a righty on the mound. It doesn't matter. You put Marte right there in that 3-hole or the 2-hole, whichever you want. And you just leave him there, whether it's righty, lefty. Anthony's going to play against lefty. So there's not this back and forth platooning, right, of guys here and there. So it changes the roster a little bit, but it's a way to add a nice bat.
All right, circling back to pitching real quick before we go to break. It sounds like the sort of push to get a number 2 starter has maybe backed off a little bit. I think they are still very interested, but they seem to be pretty happy with their depth. I get the feeling they will add more pitching before it's through, but coming into this offseason, I thought, we were talking a Joe Ryan type deal. I'm not sure we're talking about that anymore.
No, and we'll see. I think the door is open for that. They're not as desperate. They have a little bit of leverage in trade talks. I know when I thought about that number 2, I thought about someone going with Crochet for the next 3 or 4, 5, 6 years, right? The Chris Sale to go with David Price, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking. For 2026, I think people have underrated Sonny Gray and who he is. And I think, quite frankly, this kind of pitching department's like, I don't know why you guys are looking at ERA. Like the last 2 years, he's been a better pitcher than he has been in his career. He's walking less guys. He's striking more guys out. You now have 2 guys on top of your rotation that can strike out 200. We can debate whether he's a 2, 3, whatever it is. The reality is we won't know that until October 1st of next year. Let's see how he pitches, right? He could pitch like a number 2. He could pitch like a number 4. We will see. But right now, depth-wise pitching, they can run a rotation out with a ton of depth. You don't have a lineup right now. You better get some bats.
All right, we're going to talk more pitching in a minute because Sonny Gray had a lot to say about the Yankees, the evil empire, and today the empire strikes back. We'll hear what Brian Cashman had to say about Sonny Gray's comments and more as we roll on. A special Winter Meetings edition of 310 to Left presented by your New England Ford dealers continues after this. 310 to Left is presented by your New England Ford dealers who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 310 to Left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
New York it just wasn't a good situation for me. Wasn't a great setup for me and my family. never wanted to go there in the first place. When that was kind of happening, when we were in Oakland and, you know, I was getting traded, that was a long time ago. I never wanted to go there. So then I was there, and it just kind of like, it just didn't really work for kind of who I am. And but no, it did not factor into that, because but I do appreciate my time there, because I feel like without that, I mean, when did I leave there? In 2018. So then I had 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. So 7 years. I do feel like the last 7 years of my career, in my life and everything has been better. I've been a better baseball player, husband, everything from having that experience and going through that. So I do appreciate that aspect of it, right? And I just feel like I learned so much after going through that. As when I immediately left, I was just like, you know what? I just wasn't myself. And I don't know what led to that or anything, but it just wasn't, it just didn't feel like I was allowed to just go out there and be Sonny, like go out there and just be yourself. And it took me a little bit of time in 2019 to get back to that a little bit. But once I did, I just did. And, went back to the All-Star game the following year. I knew I was still good. I knew I was still one of the best pitchers in the game. And I just continued to grow. And I feel like I've been better in my 30s than I was in my 20s. And I was pretty dang good in my 20s. And I still feel strong, and I still feel like I am and can be one of the best pitchers in baseball. But I will say what did factor into my decision to come to Boston is it feels good to me to go to a place now where, you know what, it's easy to hate the Yankees, right? It's easy to go out and have that rivalry and go in it with full force, full steam ahead. I like the challenge. I appreciate the challenge. I accept the challenge. But this time around, it's just go out and be yourself. Don't try to be anything other than yourself. And if people don't like it, it is what it is. I am who I am, and I'm okay with that.
So that was Sonny Gray when he spoke to the media last week, making it clear he did not enjoy his time in New York. Today, Brian Cashman, or I guess it was yesterday, Brian Cashman here at the winter meetings saying, yeah, he lied. You know, he was in Oakland saying he wanted to come to New York. It was year 2 when he realized he didn't like it, and maybe that was because he wasn't pitching well. And then he said, well, he told me, Cashman saying, that Gray told me his agent made him lie, and his agent came out and he said that never happened. So we got a little spice to the rivalry now.
Yeah, either way, it's good.
Yeah.
You know, either way, it's good. Listen, it wasn't good for Sonny. And I know a lot of people mention that, like, can he handle the big market, right? Minnesota, all these different, St. Louis, all these places where he's throwing the ball real well, but not in New York. And I'd say this, because I've seen it before, and this is real with players. When they get drafted by an organization and they come up through the minor leagues and they get to the big leagues and they spend 4 or 5 years, that first time you get traded to a new team, it's a difficult time. Right? You don't know anybody. You're trying to prove your worth. They traded for me down the stretch. I need to do this. I need to do that. And the Yankees, I think we've heard too, like in his presser, they tried to change a little thing, try to get him away from the core of who he was. But when you're going to a new organization, you're going to do whatever you want. And the reality was it wasn't going well. And I don't think he liked that very much. So I think the experience of going through it once, and he talked about how it's made him better, I think coming back to a big market, I think it'll help him, this time kind of adjusting. Right? So, and it doesn't hurt that he wants to root against the Yankees and he's here in Boston.
Yeah, you want to win
thing.
over the new fans?
Yeah.
You say you hate New York. His old manager, Aaron Boone, was asked today about his thoughts on what Sonny Gray had to say about New York.
I mean, a little bit. Anytime, a player comes out and says that, but that's all right. I mean, he's in Boston now. He's not supposed to like us anyway. So that being said, I've always really liked Sonny, got along well with him. So, if spice up the rivalry a little, there's nothing wrong with that. But I was a little surprised at how deep he went.
Could you tell he hated it here when he was here?
I don't know about hated. I don't know if I would have characterized it like that. I know it wasn't certainly the best stop for him, but one of those probably important steps along what's been a really good career for him.
I like what Boone said. Spice up the rivalry a little bit. Look, Red Sox season ended in New York in the playoffs. Now you got this. I think the rivalry is getting spiced up a little bit.
I think it'll be fun going to New York with Sonny Gray in the mound. We'll see how those Yankee fans react to some of these comments. And the reality is like, that could be a concern going to New York, because one of the reasons why too he struggled in New York is when you look at some of the spray charts of Sonny Gray, the power he gives up to righties are right center field, right center, right? Opposite field power in the Yankee Stadium. We know the ball flies out of right center. Fenway Park, you'll take that all day long, especially with guys like Cedon and Abreu in center field and right field. So, but it does add to it. It'll be fun going to Yankee Stadium with him on the mound.
He's a strikeout guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't walk anybody. Last 2 years, he was in St. Louis. Ollie Marmol is the manager of the Cardinals. He was asked today about his thoughts on Sonny Gray and what he did for him last year.
I liked having Sonny a ton, man. Even in talking to him after we made the trade, this is a guy that competes really well, prepares on a completely different level. I think back to the first bullpen he threw with us in spring training, just the intentionality behind it. He allowed others to see what it looks like to prepare extremely well, and then a lot of those young guys started to mimic it, which is what you want in one of your leaders. So I love the way he prepared and the way he competed. And gave you everything he had every time out. He communicated extremely well with me, so I enjoyed my time with him. Obviously, it fits what we're trying to do here in building for the future and getting some control in Fitz and Clark's with high upside there. So sad to see him go, but it fits what we're trying to do. And again, I would say Chaim's been clear on what it's going to take. Yeah.
Interesting stuff there that Marmol had to say about how the young pitchers imitated him, emulated him, learned from him, the preparation, what goes into it. They've got some young pitchers here. That is important. Even Crochet is a young pitcher. Again, not that he needs to learn anything from anybody, okay? But you drop a veteran in, kind of what they were hoping Walker Buehler would be, kind of what Lucas Giolito was when he was around. This is an important veteran on a team that is still finding its way in some corners.
Yeah, I loved hearing that from Ollie. It was just, that's exactly what you're looking for. When you bring in a veteran that's had a career that Sonny Gray has had, these young guys, you mentioned Crochet, it's still 1 year. The guy is very talented. He's one of the best pitchers in the game. But that doesn't mean he's not going to learn. He will continue to learn each and every year from guys like Sonny Gray, from Lucas Giolito, from a Walker Buehler. So, and then the youth with the talent that you have in this rotation, there's going to be a lot of youth in this, no matter how it shakes out. So to be able to see a Sonny Gray and how he prepares and how he looks at a lineup and how he views hitters, I think that stuff is so important. I always say you need adults, right? Guys that have been through it before. There's nothing like experience. He's failed. He's succeeded. He's bounced back. Those lessons learned are very important to show other guys.
That's why Bregman was so important to this team last year, right? You dropped him in, he instantly became the leader. We'll see if Gray is that type of veteran leader on this pitching staff. It is interesting because, again, we'll see if they add a true number 2. Right now, I think if you look at this rotation, I would say by the end of the year, if it's this group right now, you'll have 3 guys who will spend 6 weeks as the number 2. It'll be Bayo for a stretch. And again, however they line up 1 through 5 is one thing. But the guy who's really your second best pitcher, I think it's going to be Gray for a stretch. I think it's going to be Bayo for a stretch. Could be Oviedo for a stretch if they don't add another guy.
Yeah, I'm not big on numbers. Numbers matter in the postseason when you can line up a rotation. Who's going game 2? Opening day doesn't matter to me. You have an ace. You have Garrett Crochet. Everybody else fills in. Last year you had a 1-2-3. You had guys in there that were Crochet and a couple of guys who were mid-3 ERAs. That wasn't the problem. The problem was your 4-5 you couldn't get anything out of. And whether it was injuries or young guys coming up, limited, whatever it may be. So a lot of injuries. So you add 5 guys, right? So right now it's Gray and it's Bayo. So is he replacing Giolito? Is he replacing Buehler? And you got some young guys that you really like. We're forgetting a guy like Cutter Crawford, too. And Patrick Sandoval, I don't know where he is, but he's another one to where Cutter was really, really good that last year. People talk about the second half. Well, he's dealing with the knee. We found out, that knee was bothering him. So he's a really good pitcher. Give me 5 guys. right? You got an ace, give me 4 other guys, and I have a good rotation. So we'll see where this whole thing ends up
And
still.
by the way, if everyone's healthy, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 guys in Worcester who can jump up and make a start whenever you need them. Now, we haven't talked a lot about Oviedo. 2023, before the surgery, Pirates were talking about him as being a really important part of their pitching going forward. And that's a really good pitching staff, but they looked at him as a middle-of-the-rotation guy. Comes back last year, drops his arm slot a little bit, strikeouts go up, velocity, fastball plays better. He's a different guy last year.
Yeah, he is. I was talking with Derek Shelton, who's now the manager of the Twins, but had him in Pittsburgh. He absolutely loves him. He's not afraid. He attacks hitters. The issues has been strikes, right? Strike throwing ability. So can we improve that? But he said the difference that he saw this year too was the fastball, and that's it. I mean, that's what you're basing on. You're basing on projection. You always had to swing and miss slider, but the fastball came back and it was tangible. It was different. The arm slot was lowered. This is a big thing in baseball. He's no longer 32, 33 arm angle. It's down to 26, so he's throwing the ball lower. That adds ride to his fastball. It had a 31% whiff rate. That is ridiculous for a fastball. Most of them are in that 18 to 20 range. So it was real. And I think that's what the Red Sox were counting on. That's why I think a lot of teams, you open up a lot of guys' eyes all of a sudden around the game of baseball. The Red Sox would acquire him based on that potential. So I think they're pretty high on this guy.
He's going to have to find his command. 85 walks in 2023, 13 hit batters. That has been a problem.
That's an issue.
He's got to get that under control. Don Kelly is the manager now in Pittsburgh and was at the end of the year last year. He was asked today about Oviedo and about Justinson Garcia, the password, who is now a Pirates outfielder.
Oviedo, I mean, what he went through last year, Tommy John, and then the lat in spring training, and the way that he was able to come back and the competitor that he is, it stinks losing a guy like that. When you look at a guy that's going to be in the rotation, from our standpoint, in order to get Garcia, it was something we had to give up something to get something, and really excited about bringing Garcia back and the impact that he could potentially have in 26. And, the upside that he has is tremendous, and really excited to add him back. Obviously stinks to lose Oviedo, but excited about adding Garcia.
With Oviedo, the fastball movement profile changed, right? Like it looked like there was more carry on the fastball. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, it was. I think that. I don't know all the stuff, but the extension and the way that the fastball played was a little bit different. Probably I know our guys worked hard on it with him to continue to adjust some things, and he did a great job of being able to make the adjustments.
You mentioned Garcia. What do you kind of like about just the possibility of him adding some power to the lineup in 26 and just the impact that he could potentially make?
Yeah. Some big-time power that he brings, and just the ability to be able to play all 3 outfield positions. Looks like he's a above-average outfielder, and just the way I saw that double that he hit in his first at-bat down there in winter ball, and the way that he hustled and ran into second, all the reports that we've gotten back in the video that we've gotten to watch, really excited to add a young prospect of his caliber to the team.
Well, we know the Red Sox were dealing from a position of depth. They had outfield depth. They moved the password. He was one of their top prospects. But Craig Breslow said it today, and we've heard it time and again. It was going to be really hard for him to make this team anytime soon. It was not an easy path for Garcia to get to the Boston Red Sox.
No, and especially now with Christian Campbell, maybe focusing on the outfield as well. There's your right-handed depth bat out there. Like, think about your outfield, and we're already talking about 4 guys that you have. It's crowded out there as it is, but if it settles in, like a lot of people are talking about, whether it's Roman, Cedon, and Abreu, they're not going anywhere. Like, that's your outfield for a while. And this idea that Password, a rookie coming up to the big leagues, can be a Rob Refschneider and hit lefties, I think, he's not ready for that. Like guys come up through the minor leagues, it's why they struggle against lefties, even righties, because they don't see many in the minor leagues. So he's not ready for that role. So you got an intriguing arm for an outfielder that you feel like you have depth, and quite frankly, Christian Campbell has just replaced him as far as depth goes in AAA, wherever it may be.
And that's not even talking about Jarren Duran.
Correct.
Right, which we're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to figure out. And you talked about this at one point today. Everybody's talking about you trade an outfielder, but what if you trade Yoshida? You'd have to eat some salaries, no doubt about that. But what if you cleared out the DH spot and you could rotate your outfielders through DH?
Well, that's that lineup I was just talking about before, with like Duran hitting third and Bregman and Lowe. Like you take, if Bregman's not here and you trade away Duran, now it's like, what is your lineup? I understand Roman Anthony takes a place of one of them, but you're still replacing the numbers that Jarren Duran put up or Wilyer Abreu put up. So, you're moving a player. I get it. The idea is to move an outfielder to improve maybe another position, whether it's a second baseman in Marte, whether it's another starting pitcher and beef up this rotation. That's fine. But I don't like getting rid of good players. You know what I mean? So we're going to be doing that to get Yoshida more at-bats. And I'm just sort of like, I don't know what the market is for Yoshida. I think he's a good hitter. I've always loved him. Plus, he's got perfect running form.
Perfect.
So I absolutely love everything about him. But just this fit on this team, I just don't know if it's there anymore.
All right, today, Breslow was asked about that depth and about other teams asking about his major league outfielders.
Sure. People also, recognize the talent level across our outfield, and I think those four guys make a lot of teams better, including ours. And so again, we have to listen because it would be, I think, irresponsible not to. But the bar we're going to hold is really high because each of those guys is capable of contributing multiple wins to our team.
Here's the problem. Everybody says you have depth, you have to trade it away. You don't.
No.
Depth is a good thing to have. I always use the Bronson Arroyo trade for Willie Mo Pena. They used 16 starting pitchers after they traded Bronson Arroyo away because we had too many starting pitchers. There's nothing wrong with having depth, as long as you can keep everybody engaged and keep them all going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I love, Breslow, too, talking about the bar is set high for these guys, right? He's not going to just give them away, and he should not give them away. Duran is the name people mention, all right? He had a 4.7 ER WAR, last year, and I think that's the floor. He didn't have a great year because of everything that he can add to your team. So this is still a really good player. I love Abreu. I'm looking for that next step from Abreu. I'm looking for Cedon with the defense to take another step offensively, right, with just his approach. So you've got four great outfielders. If you have an opportunity to improve your team elsewhere, I get it. But I'm not lining up to get rid of these guys. And he should set the bar high for these people. All of these players, they're good players.
And that's what's happening upstairs. Craig Breslow fielding calls, maybe meeting with Pete Alonso as he arrives in Orlando to meet with teams. The entire winter meetings began last night with the latest Hall of Fame announcement, and it was a surprise to most people. We will come back and discuss as our coverage of the 2025 Major League Baseball winter meetings from Orlando continues after this on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers.
No, I saw Marichal again. That as I mentioned in my opening, there's no way you could see sorry. there's no way that I can. See, I'm a mechanical guy, and science too, mechanical and science. I can't control my emotions, so I'm not an emotional guy, but I guess I am. There's no way in the world that you can write my name down and pin it next to those types of names. It doesn't calculate with me, and I'm a guy that wants to calculate things. And I still to this day, it's been 24 hours now. There's no way. Maybe I'll get there. Maybe. But I know the things that I did over my career mattered. That's why I cried at my retirement, because I love the game so much. And I'm grateful for people that recognized it, argued it, thought that I was good enough to be pinned with those guys. I guess a lot of gratitude. So I don't know if that answers your question, but you got some tears out of me. Good job.
So the emotion from Jeff Kent, clearly their all-time home run leader for second baseman.
Yeah.
The home run leader out of position, obviously you're Hall of Fame worthy. I think the bigger story out of the vote is that he was the only one. And if you want to go old school, you make the argument for Don Mattingly, you make the argument for Dale Murphy. If you want to open the can of worms and say we are not going to talk about the steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, then you got to say Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. None of them are in. Yeah. Jeff Kent only. How surprised were you?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, you mentioned some of the numbers. I think more 100 RBI seasons than any second baseman in the league to go with the home runs. It's just, I thought this was Mattingly's time. I thought this was maybe Dale Murphy's time. And quite frankly, I think the whole system's kind of messed up. You know, they put this committee together, and I think you can look at the committee and tell that they're not going to put in the steroid guys, right? If you put in guys that were recently in 3 or 4 or 5 years in it who played against these guys, I think to a man, everybody would say Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter you ever faced. Everybody knows, right? But still, it's about dominating your era. Same thing with a guy like Roger Clemens. So just the way they put the committees together, and it's like 16 of them, you only get 3 votes, I think it makes it extremely hard, especially for those guys.
16 members of the committee. 7 of them are Hall of Fame players. The average age of that player was 78 years old.
That's not going to happen.
These are not guys who are going to look kindly upon anyone in this steroid era. It is interesting that the committee is how they make it. You mentioned the 3 votes. That makes it very difficult for anyone to get 12. Mm-hmm. I think you should be able to vote for more than 3.
Yeah.
And so now, because Bonds and Clemens didn't even get 5 votes, they are not eligible on a committee again until 2031, 6 years from now. And if they don't get 5 votes, then they are done. Can never be brought back into a committee.
Yeah, I just feel like when you leave it up to the guys in the Hall of Fame, especially the older players, want nothing to do with this, right? That's never going to happen. Some of the younger guys, you never know, right? So as long as the average age is, 75, 78 years old, that is not going to happen, and they may not be on the ballot and may never get in.
And by the way, the big news over the last year that Pete Rose is now eligible, well, you just make a committee that won't look kindly upon that, and you kind of get to play it both ways, right? Yeah. You say he's eligible, but you never let him get in.
The Hall of Fame debate's really kind of getting annoying, to be perfectly honest with you, right? Because now all of a sudden people are getting in, and because they're getting in, you're looking at players and say, well, if he's in, he should be in. And it really should be about the best of the best, you know? And that's why I look back at the era. I played in that steroid era, you know? And I think the funniest part is when people start talking about this guy's not in because he took, this guy's in because he's clean. People pretend like they know who was clean and who wasn't. And I think that's the most laughable part, to be honest with you.
The toughest part for me is when and I've heard it a lot over the last 24 hours, Barry Bonds was already a Hall of Famer before he started taking steroids. You know when he started taking steroids in this argument of yours?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ridiculous thing. Everyone thinks they can pinpoint a date. I saw him. That Tuesday, he started it. Yeah,
well, you know, the other thing, that they just feel like body changes. Obviously, his body changed, but, like, body changing is not the only thing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of guys out there whose bodies didn't change, but they just got stronger. You know, so it's just the whole thing to me right now is getting tough to talk
I've said this all along. Put them in, put it on the plaque, talk about the era they played, and lay it all out there.
That's it.
But they were not exceptions. The game was being played with a whole lot of guys taking a whole lot of stuff until they got it under control, and that's the way it is now. All right, you talked about comparison. We're going to show you a graphic here. Jeff Kent and Dustin Pedroia. Now, these are kind of traditional baseball numbers, and they don't really look like a strong comparison because of games played, right? Pedroia was, to me, on his way to the Hall of Fame before the Machado collision and before the injury. He was never the same. His career cut short and curtailed. We don't have the under-the-hood numbers, but if you start digging into stuff like expected WOBA and WRC plus and some of the things we look at now, he actually does compare very favorably to Jeff Kent. You can make the argument, and I believe from the eye test, Dustin Pedroia is a Hall of Famer. I just don't know if he'll ever get in because of the graphic we showed you what the numbers say.
Yeah, and that's the other part of the whole discussion of Hall of Fame. All of a sudden someone's like, you got to have 10 years of it, but if you have 8, that's not enough. It's sort of like, well, if 8 years, if you just had 2 more years, you're a Hall of Famer, but your 8 years mean nothing. So this is the part of the discussion that I feel like it just gets into weeds too much. Who's the best players in your era? Your era could be 8 years, your era could be 15. Some guys play 20. You want to reward that? Fine. But they accumulate numbers. Were there ever awesome great numbers in there, or was it just an accumulation of them? So to me, there's nothing wrong with saying I need 7 to 10. It doesn't have to be 10, And when you look at some of the numbers, again, when you start looking at guys that are getting in recently, like a Harold Baines, you start comparing Harold Baines' numbers to other players, and you say now everybody's sort of more deserving. And is that really what we set out to be when we built the Hall of Fame?
No. And by the way, we didn't even mention the simple fact that Dwight Evans should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Should have been on the ballot last night, and should have been voted in and should be in the Hall of Fame, and I'll continue saying that until we're done. I'll tell you one guy who thinks Dustin Pedroia should be in the Hall of Fame. That's Terry Francona, who managed him in Boston, played a lot of cribbage with him in Boston. Terry Francona, his annual State of the Union address as the manager of the Cincinnati Reds, and he was asked today, 20 years ago, could you ever imagine yourself here still managing a major league team? Here's what Tito said.
I didn't think I'd be alive still. You know what? Okay, when I went to Cleveland, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised, and they kind of were like, man, what are you doing? And because I've never been accused of being the smartest person. I know that, but I did it for the right reasons. And the same thing here. When I met Nick and Brad, I immediately kind of bonded with them. And yeah, I love our players. It doesn't mean we don't have tough conversations, doesn't mean we don't have tough days, but I enjoy the hell out of them. And at this point in life, I don't want to do something that I don't want to do. Doesn't seem very advantageous.
That answer right there is why you love Terry Francona. Not the part I didn't think I'd be alive, but the whole part, people did think you're going to Cleveland? Yeah. You're going to go manage the Indians at the time, and now you're coming out of retirement to manage the Cincinnati Reds? But in both cases, and I've talked to him a lot about this, he was comfortable with the setting. They were young players that he could do some coaching with. Rediscover the love of baseball, and we both know this guy is more comfortable in shorts and a T-shirt in a clubhouse than he is anywhere else on earth.
It's funny because both places. The first time we went to Cleveland, I said, "Why there?" You know what I mean? Are they really building anything? Like, what do we? And then again, when you're going for the manager, you know the system, you know who's coming, you know the potential. And obviously, he turned the Indians into a great baseball team. It happened again in Cincy. I'm like, really, Cincinnati? Like, what are we going to do in Cincinnati? And of course, he got him to the postseason. We know Terry's one of the best managers in the game, maybe in the history of the game. And I think the great thing about it is, if you listen to his press conference, he's always ripping himself. He's always talking about, at least once, he's like, I'm not a very smart man, but we know that there's that confidence in him, right? That he can get away with that. So he's always ripping himself. He's a fun listen, that's for sure.
The only person he rips more than himself is Kevin Cash.
Yes.
We know that.
Yeah.
He cannot stop. The two of them have a great relationship. Kevin Cash spoke today. I'll tell you what, the American League East is back. This next season, I mean, you've got a team that almost won the World Series and is adding. Yeah. Yankees are going to be adding. Red Sox feel like they are in a great place, and the Baltimore Orioles are going to be back.
It's a problem. And really, when I look around the league, it was funny because I was looking at even like next year's schedule, and teams are getting better. Like even these so-called bad baseball teams, right? Like the White Sox have pitching. But when you look at the AL East, we know Tampa's not going anywhere. Like they're still going to be a good baseball team, right? They have a couple big bats in that lineup. You know they're going to have pitching. Baltimore took a huge step back. All of a sudden, they got Kyle Bradish back at the end of the year. We faced him at the end of the year, and it was nasty. And then we saw what Rodgers is doing, finally fulfilling what everybody thought he could be. So let's see what they do in free agency. They add another arm. This is where their problem was, the pitching staff. You add another arm. They add a bullpen piece. The Yankees are going to be good. Toronto has turned into the American League superpower. They've turned American League Dodgers. They're just going to spend. So this is not going to be an easy go here in 2026. Division's tough.
American League East is back to what it was, no doubt about that. And by the way, you said the Rays aren't going anywhere. That's not true. They're going back to Tropicana Field.
Yes.
They're going to have a roof over their head. Although Kevin Cash today said, I haven't been there. I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah.
They tell me we'll be okay. I haven't seen it yet. We'll see how that plays out. We'll take a break, come back. My one-on-one conversation with Craig Breslow as we continue our coverage of the winter meetings here in Orlando, Florida. It's 3:10 to left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. 3:10 to left is presented by your New England Ford dealers, who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 3:10 to left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. We are here at Disney World in Orlando, where Red Sox fans are hoping a little magic will happen. Nothing yet. We spoke with Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow about how things might be coming together as these winter meetings begin. Craig, you kind of said a lot of times day one in these things is kind of a feeling out. You're here, day one. Is that what's going on so far?
Yeah. A lot of conversations in this room with our internal group, just trying to prioritize, strategize, but also conversations with other teams, with agents, just trying to get a sense for where the market might go.
Some years you try to get started here. In this case, you've already made a couple of deals. You've added pitching depth, obviously, Sonny Gray, Oviedo that you got just before coming down here. Talk about that depth and the rotation, how you feel about that rotation right now after those two deals.
Sure, we feel like we've accumulated depth. There's no such thing as too much starting pitching. But I think we're in a position to where if some of that depth allows us to address needs in other spots on the roster, we'd be willing to talk about that. But as we saw last year, the year before, not having enough pitching can be destabilizing to a team, and so we set out to try and amass, not just depth, but guys that we feel like can win us meaningful games.
I know you've said that you'll always add. You never have enough pitching, especially. But do you feel comfortable with the rotation as it is right now? If you were going into camp, would you feel good with the major league rotation where it is?
Yeah, it's true that we can feel good with the rotation where it is, and also still attempt to identify meaningful upgrades, and I think that's where we are.
You've talked about adding that bat that could make a difference in the middle of this lineup. How is that looking right now? How's the market sort of coming together on the offensive side?
Yeah, I think as we've seen, it's generally been slow to materialize, but we're having conversations with other teams, and agents, and still recognize that there's at this point some work to be done in terms of rounding out the roster on the position player side and finding that middle of the order bat that can really kind of change the profile of our offense.
There were reports that Pete Alonso would be here meeting with teams. I know you said you weren't going to get into specifics about meetings, but you came here as a player. What is the value of that face-to-face discussion as opposed to a Zoom or going through an agent or whatever? What's it mean to be able to have a meeting with somebody here?
Yeah, I think there's something more sincere, more authentic about being able to have a conversation face-to-face in real time that maybe doesn't come out over a phone call or a Zoom. And so I can remember coming here as a player. I didn't have the fortune of meeting with too many teams. Apparently they had other priorities, but those that I did meet with, I was grateful for that chance.
You find that last year was kind of the Juan Soto log jam, right? And that broke, and then things started moving. I don't know if there's one player like that this year, but it does kind of feel like there's a lot of waiting right now for a move to be made. Is that often the way this goes? Once a move is made, other moves start to happen more quickly?
It seems like it. There seems as though there are a handful of kind of key free agents, who will, of course, eventually sign, and then from there are others who draft off those markets. Which isn't to say that there may not be an opportunity to just identify someone, go after them aggressively and bring them in, but typically there's kind of a sequence to how these things play out.
I think the whole thing about Alonso coming to Orlando is really interesting, right? And again, the reports are he's meeting with multiple teams. Baltimore was another team that was mentioned, but when you got a guy coming here, it's like he's trying to get the action going. Yeah. Now, again, Scott Boras is here too. It's not just Alonso knocking on your door and saying, right? He wants he wants years, he wants the deal. We'll hear from Boras tomorrow, the day after. He'll have his State of the Union. I'm sure his script writers are hard at work coming up with this year's puns. But I love the idea of a guy like Alonso coming here to the meetings saying, let's talk, let's make a deal, let's get me on a team.
Yeah, I like it too, because then the team kind of present what their plan is, right? And let kind of let Pete Alonso know where this organization is headed. I think the Red Sox are heading in a good spot right now. So the question I have, this isn't like the NFL, right? When you do like a meeting and you don't let them leave the room. Like it's almost like, okay, let me hear all these 3 teams or 4 teams that are interested in me. Now let me go home and have a week or so and try to break this thing down and try to figure out where I want to go. I think Alonso would be in play. I don't know what the market is right now. You start looking at, obviously, he could go back to the Mets, but I think he could be in play, and he could fill a lot of holes.
And the word is he spent a lot of time in the South Shore.
Yeah.
Right? His wife is from there, and apparently he's been telling everybody he wants to play for the Red Sox. I'm pretty sure if you saw him in New York, he'd probably tell you he wants to play for the Mets. If you saw him in Baltimore, he'd probably say he wants to play for the Orioles. Scott Boras is his agent. He coaches you well.
Yeah, the only thing is with the Mets, though, it's like he had such a good career there, and you're sort of like, okay, why'd you put me through this last year, right? And it's just a 1-year deal, and it's sort of like, okay, was that one of those, and it didn't end well with the Mets. Now, listen, obviously they're going to spend money, they're a good baseball team, but do you want to go back? Do you want to be part of that again? Do you have hard feelings with how last offseason went, right? So this is some of the things I think, we'll see in the next coming days, but he would really answer a lot of problems.
I asked before, can you have Bichette and Bregman? We said, no. Can you have Alonso and Bregman?
Well, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the plan. But
that's
again,
plan A, isn't it?
Now we got to know where we're spending, right? I mean, because both those players are going to be in that $30 million range, right? So that's 60 more on these 2 guys. Now, there's ways to maybe cut some salary here with some other players. It's just a question of where this salary is going to sit at. I don't think it's going over 300, okay? The question is, can it go over 284, which is like that other threshold? So can you tickle that a little bit? We'll see.
We'll see. I like being tickled. Let's see if they can tickle us a little bit and get us laughing. Triston Casas, by the way, is a name that Alex Cora brought up earlier today. A guy just, and if you're a fan, you don't want to hear it. Wait, don't. When I'm talking Pete Alonso, don't come back to me with Triston Casas. Yeah. But the point is, opening day, he was your cleanup hitter. And nobody's talking much about Triston Casas. You asked Craig Breslow today about Casas and about what he could do for this team still.
I don't think anything has changed with respect to what he's capable of doing. He just, he hasn't been healthy enough to stay on the field to show that. When he has, he's demonstrated that he can be a above average major leaguer. But I think we're mindful of not putting so much pressure on him from both a performance and a health standpoint that, we're feeling like, hey, come opening day, you have to be ready to step foot on first base and give us 600 at bats and play 155 games. We think that's what he's capable of doing, but I think if I were to sit here today and say he is with certainty going to play first base on opening day, I think that'd be foolish. But at his best, he's a guy that's capable of doing all the things that we talk about when we talk about a middle of the order bat, and that he's patient, he's got great strike zone discipline, he can hit the ball out of the park. And so, we're just concentrating on getting him healthy. That's where he is as well. Working really hard, just rented a house to be at Fort Myers all offseason. So I just don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Does he factor in at all for you, like searching for that, maybe a first baseman? You always sit there and say, well, it's a bonus because maybe we have a DH to go with it. Does he play in that at all in your search?
He's definitely a factor. Again, because we still feel like he's got immense ceiling, and we haven't seen it, but I don't think it's it's a talent problem. I think it's just a matter of making sure that he comes into spring training healthy and prepared to take on workload. And he's still young enough that there's development in front of him. But again, we're approaching 2026 as though we're trying to build a team that can compete to win the World Series, and that means that we need to be open to any possible path that we can to improve the team. And I think looking at first base and potentially bringing someone in is one way to do that, knowing that there are going to be ways to get at bats for everybody that we need to.
So Marcelo was in it.
Listen, I don't think there's any doubt that Triston Casas is going to have to prove himself all over again. Okay, and I think what we know of Triston Casas, he probably relishes an opportunity like that. But this guy they were looking at him saying, all right, here's our 30 home run guy. This is the guy in the middle of our lineup. You need him back.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, he's not going into spring training the starting first baseman, right? And we'll see what happens here in the offseason, but they're not treating it that way. They're still in on guys that can play first base. But when you look at Triston Casas, it kind of reminds me of Trevor Story last year. Like if I told a Red Sox fan in spring training that your infield defense is relied on right now, Trevor Story being healthy, I don't think you feel pretty good about it, right? Because the first 3 years didn't go so well. So if I was to say I think Triston Casas is going to have a big role in this team offensively, I think you need Triston Casas to swing the baseball bat. I don't think anybody feels good about that, given the injury history. But it may be true. And it may not be, you can get a guy like Alonso. It may be, well, can you put a guy at DH that hits 30 home runs, potential? And maybe that's not till May. He does have options left. Not a bad idea, right? He's missed a lot of time. April, May, give him some at-bats, and all of a sudden he just starts raking down in AAA. You bring him up, and now you've got that potential in the middle of your order. There's ways to find it, and he could be that important.
All right, we'll see if he factors in or not. We'll see what happens in the coming days. Day one continuing here in Orlando. Tomorrow we are back with another edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers in F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Alex Cora will be joining us tomorrow, so join us then for Lou Merloni and our entire crew down here in Orlando. I'm Tom Caron. Thanks for watching 310 to Left. We'll see you again tomorrow.